The crash cut through the room like a gunshot. 1 second there was laughter, soft jazz, crystal glasses clinking like everyone here had something to prove. The next, a tower of champagne flutes tipped sideways and exploded across the marble floor. Glass shattered, bubbly sprayed. A drunk groomsman froze mid-laugh, blinking like his brain hadn't caught up yet. Silence hit fast. 100 conversations died at once. I didn't move. I stood near the back of the ballroom, hands loosely folded, weight balanced without thinking. Old habits. You don't lean. You don't relax. Not in a room full of people who don't see you. The Hawthorne estate was doing its best impression of old money. High ceilings, hand-carved beams, chandeliers that looked like they'd survived at least one war. Every table dressed in white linen so crisp it could slice paper. And the flowers, imported white orchids, too many of them. The scent hung in the air, sweet, heavy, expensive in a way that tried too hard. Everything here said one thing. Look how rich we are. Most of it was rented. I watched the groomsmen stumble back, muttering something slurred, hands half raised, like maybe the glasses would put themselves back together if he looked sorry enough. No one helped him. They just stared. Women in designer dresses pulled their hems back like the floor was contagious. Men in tailored suits stepped away, careful not to scuff their shoes. Preston's family, the elite side. You could spot them easily. They didn't look at the mess. They looked at who was going to clean it. That's when Chloe moved. She didn't rush. Of course she didn't. She glided. $15,000 of custom fabric hugged her like it was proud to be there. The dress shimmered under the chandelier light. Every bead, every stitch screaming for attention. She smiled, but not at the mess, at the audience. Then her eyes found me. Of course they did. I didn't look away. I never do. She walked straight across the floor, heels clicking in a slow, deliberate rhythm. People parted for her, not out of respect, out of habit. Golden child coming through. When she stopped in front of me, the room leaned in. You could feel it. That quiet shift. People sensing something. Entertaining. Chloe tilted her head like she was studying me. Like I was something she might buy if it was on sale. Then she turned, snapped her fingers once, and a staff member rushed over. Young kid, nervous. Probably his first big event. Get me something to clean this up, Chloe said, not even looking at him. He nodded fast and disappeared. She turned back to me, smile tightening just enough. I could already see it coming. The kid returned with a broom, wooden handle, cheap. The kind you'd find in a storage closet, not a place charging 5 figures for a wedding. Chloe took it from him, didn't thank him. Then she pushed it straight into my hands. Clean it up, Val, she said loud enough for half the room to hear. A few people chuckled. She leaned in slightly, voice dropping just enough to feel personal. You're used to doing the grunt work, right? There it was, same line, different setting. She straightened, smile widening as she looked around, making sure everyone was watching. Try not to embarrass us. That part got a reaction. A couple of Preston's relatives exchanged looks. One woman covered her mouth, pretending it was shock, but her eyes said she was enjoying it. A man near the bar smirked openly. They were waiting for the breakdown, the outburst, the scene. That's what people like them love. They want you loud, emotional, easy to dismiss. I didn't give them that. I looked at the broom, then at the glass, then back at Chloe, and I smiled. Calm, small, controlled. The kind of smile that doesn't ask permission. For a second, just a second, something in her expression flickered. Confusion, maybe even a little irritation. Good. I took the broom, no hesitation, no shaking hands. I stepped forward, angled the bristles against the marble, and started sweeping. Slow, steady, efficient. You learn how to move like that when you've cleaned worse in worse places. Sand, metal, things you don't ask questions about. Glass is easy. Behind me, the whispers started. Is she serious? She's actually doing it. I thought she was family. She is. That's... wow. Yeah, wow. I kept sweeping. Each stroke pushed the mess into a neat line. No wasted movement, no rush. I didn't look up, didn't acknowledge anyone, but I felt everything. The weight of their stares, the quiet judgment, the satisfaction some of them got out of this. And Chloe, I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to crack, waiting for me to remind everyone why I never fit into her version of the family. I didn't. I just kept sweeping. Because here's the thing. They thought this was the moment I hit bottom. They thought this was humiliation. They thought they were in control. What they didn't know was that I had already seen the numbers, already followed the paper trail, already signed the documents, already set everything in motion. This wasn't my lowest point. This was theirs. They just hadn't realized it yet. A shard of glass scraped across the marble with a sharp, clean sound. I gathered the last of it into a pile, straightened up, still holding the broom. The room was quieter now, not silent, just uneasy, like something didn't land the way it was supposed to. Chloe crossed her arms, forcing a little laugh. See, she said to no one in particular. Teamwork. A few weak chuckles followed. I met her eyes again, still calm, still smiling, and that flicker came back. Stronger this time. Doubt, good. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the broom. I just swept the glass. Because as I looked at my sister's smug face, I knew a secret about this $100,000 wedding that she didn't. And the man who was about to walk through those heavy oak doors was going to turn her perfect night into a living nightmare. Have you ever been treated like you were the least important person in the room, only to realize you were the one holding all the power? Let me know in the comments, and if you've ever dealt with family like this, hit subscribe. You're going to want to see how this plays out. I kept sweeping the sound of bristles against marble, steady and controlled, but my mind was already somewhere else, not in that ballroom, not with the orchids and fake smiles, back where things made more sense. Dust, heat, long days that didn't care how you felt, 14-hour patrols, gear digging into your shoulders, sweat drying before it had time to cool. You learn fast out there. You learn what matters. You learn what doesn't. No one hands you a broom out there to humiliate you. You grab whatever tool gets the job done and you move. That's it. No audience, no applause, no judgment from people who've never had to earn anything. Just work. I got used to that kind of clarity. It stays with you, even when you come home. Especially when you come home. Because home didn't work like that. At home, effort didn't mean much. Not in my family. I was the one who fixed things. Car wouldn't start, call Val. Internet down, Val. Something heavy needed moving, Val again. Useful, reliable, invisible. Chloe didn't fix anything. She didn't have to. She was the golden child. Always had been. The kind of person who walked into a room and expected it to rearrange itself around her. And somehow, it always did. My mom made sure of that. Barbara had a way of talking about Chloe like she was an achievement. Not a person. A trophy she'd earned just by raising her. Look at her, she'd say. She just has it. I never figured out what it was, but apparently I didn't have it. Didn't matter that I enlisted right out of high school. Didn't matter that I built something for myself from the ground up. Didn't matter that I came back in one piece when a lot of people didn't. At home, I was still the one who took out the trash, literally and otherwise. I remember the day I got back from my last deployment. I didn't tell anyone the exact time. I didn't need a welcome party. I just wanted a shower, a real bed, maybe a quiet night. I pulled into the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled. Sat there for a second. Let the silence settle. It felt different. Not bad, just not mine anymore. I grabbed my duffel bag and walked inside. The house smelled the same, cleaning products and something sweet Chloe probably sprayed everywhere. Mom, I called out. No answer. Figures. I headed down the hallway, straight to my room. Or what used to be my room. The door was open. That should have been my first clue. I stepped inside and stopped. Everything was gone. The bed, the dresser, the desk I'd had since I was a kid. The walls weren't even the same color. They'd been painted some soft, trendy beige. Ring lights set up in the corners, a camera tripod near the window, shelves lined with makeup clothes, random props. A neon sign on the wall read something like, "Create your dream." I just stood there, still holding my bag, trying to match what I was seeing with what I knew. It didn't match. Chloe walked in behind me like it was nothing. "Oh, hey," she said casual, "you're back." I didn't turn around. "What happened to my room?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "Mom didn't tell you?" Of course she didn't. Chloe walked past me, adjusted something on one of the shelves. "I needed a space," she said. "For my content. This light is way better in here." I looked at the walls again, at the spot where my bed used to be. Where's my stuff garage, I think. Or attic. Somewhere. Like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter. Barbara finally showed up a minute later, all smiles like this was a reunion. "Oh, good, you're home," she said, hugging me quickly, already distracted. I stepped back. "You turned my room into a studio." She waved a hand like I was making a big deal out of nothing. "Well, you weren't using it." I stared at her. "I live here." "You were gone, Valerie. Gone. Right. Doing a job she never once asked about." I let it go, not because it didn't matter, But because I already knew how that conversation would end, same way it always did, with me being difficult, with Chloe being misunderstood, with Barbara telling me to just be happy for your sister, so I took my bag, went to the garage, and made space for myself, again. That's how it always worked. I adapted, I stayed quiet, I watched. That part they never noticed. Fast forward a couple years. Family dinner, same house, same table, same roles. Chloe sat across from me scrolling through her phone between bites, barely paying attention. Barbara hovered, refilling her glass, asking if she needed anything every 5 minutes. I waited, let them settle, then I spoke. I started something I said. That got their attention. A little. Barbara glanced at me. Started what? A logistics consulting firm, I said. Small right now. But it's growing. I kept it simple. Didn't oversell it. Didn't need to. I'd already lined up clients, already had contracts, already saw where it was going. I was proud of it. Not loud proud. Quiet proud. The kind that doesn't need approval. Barbara blinked, then nodded slowly like she was humoring me. That's nice, she said. Nice. Before I could say anything else, Chloe sat up suddenly interested. Oh my God, I forgot to tell you, she said, looking at Barbara, not me. Preston closed another deal this week. There it was. Shift the spotlight. Barbara lit up instantly. See, she said, turning fully to Chloe. That's what I'm talking about. Ambition. I sat there, fork in hand, waiting. Chloe smiled, enjoying it. He's in real estate, she added like I needed the reminder. High-end. Investment properties. Barbara nodded like she understood what that meant. Smart, she said. Very smart. Then she looked at me and smiled. The kind of smile that sounds supportive but isn't. You should learn from your sister Val, she said. Hard work is for people who aren't smart enough to marry well. The table went quiet for a second. Not shocked, just satisfied. Like the right thing had been said. I felt it land, not like a punch, more like something familiar, expected. I set my fork down, took a sip of water, and nodded once. Good to know, I said. That was it. No argument, no defense, no explanation. I let them have it. Let them believe I was still playing catch-up, still struggling, still trying to prove something. It made them comfortable, careless, and careless people make mistakes. I swallowed the insult and let them think I was just a struggling veteran. It was the smartest thing I ever did, because when people think you are invisible, they stop hiding their crimes when you enter the room. I adjusted the broom against the wall just enough to keep it from sliding, and kept my face neutral. 6 months earlier, I was standing in my mother's living room, staring at a router that looked like it had given up on life. Internet's been down all morning, Barbara said, arms crossed like the device had personally offended her. Chloe has a brand deal due today. This is important. Of course it was. Chloe sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, not even looking up. I told you we should have switched providers, she muttered like that solved anything. I set my bag down. I'll take a look. That was my role. Fix it. Don't ask questions. Don't stay too long. The router sat on a side table, blinking red like it was trying to send a distress signal. I crouched down, checked the cables. Loose connection, cheap hardware, nothing complicated. I unplugged it, waited. Plugged it back in, standard reset. Behind me, I could hear them talking. Not to me, never to me. Preston says the venue is locked in, Chloe said. It's exclusive. Like, actually exclusive. There's a wait list. Barbara sounded impressed. Good, that's what we need. People need to see the standard you're setting. Standard, right. I watched the rotor lights cycle back on. Green this time. Give it a minute, I said, standing up. No response. I wiped my hands on my jeans, glanced around the room out of habit. Situational awareness doesn't turn off just because you're home. Every detail matters. What's out of place? What doesn't belong? That's when I saw it. Barbara's desk, not hidden, not locked, just there. A folder sat open, papers slightly misaligned like someone had been in a hurry. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the number I caught from across the room. 9 digits. Formatted in a way my brain recognized instantly. I stepped closer without thinking. Just a quick look. That's all it was supposed to be. Then I saw it clearly. My social security number. Printed clean across the top of a document. I stopped. Didn't touch anything yet. Just looked. There's a moment when something doesn't make sense, and your brain tries to fix it for you. Fill in the gaps. Explain it away. This wasn't one of those moments. This was clear. Too clear. I reached down slowly and lifted the top page. Home equity loan. Borrower name Valerie Thorne. Address my mother's house. Loan amount $85,000. My grip tightened just slightly. I flipped to the next page. Signature line. My name. My signature. Except it wasn't mine. Close enough to pass a glance. Not close enough to fool me. I don't rush when something matters. I read every line. Terms, dates, account numbers. It got worse with every page. There was a trust account listed. My trust account. Set up years ago. Something small my grandfather left me. Nothing flashy. Just a safety net. Balance 0. Transaction history showed withdrawals I never authorized. Transfers tied directly to the loan. Clean, organized, planned. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. I kept flipping. Receipts, wire confirmations, vendor payments, venue deposits, florals, catering, numbers that added up fast. Too fast. I didn't need a calculator. $85,000. Gone. Used. Spent. On a wedding. On a business that clearly couldn't support itself. Preston. That explained a lot. The successful real estate developer with no real liquidity. The constant talk, no real proof. The way he always avoided specifics. I stood there holding the papers and listened. Behind me, Chloe laughed at something on her phone. Barbara asked if the Wi-Fi was back yet. Normal. Like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't just rewritten my entire financial identity without asking. I set the papers back exactly where I found them. Same angle, same position, no trace. Then I stepped back, picked up my bag. The internet's working, I said. Barbara barely looked at me. Good, thank you. Thank you. That was it. Chloe refreshed her app, nodded once. Finally, I waited a second. Not because I needed anything. Because I was deciding something right there. In that quiet moment, most people would have exploded, demanded answers, thrown the papers on the table and forced a confrontation. I didn't. I walked out, calm, controlled, invisible, got in my car, closed the door, and sat there. Hands on the wheel, breathing steady. Heart rate normal. That's the thing about training. You don't rise to the moment. You fall back on what you've practiced. And I had practiced this. Different setting, same principle. You don't confront the problem when you first see it. You assess, you confirm, you build a full picture, then you act. I started the engine, drove home, didn't call anyone, didn't text, didn't even think about them as family in that moment. They were variables now, targets in a system I needed to understand. That night I pulled my own records, bank statements, credit reports, legal filings. Everything matched what I saw, every number lined up, every transaction traced back. There was no doubt. They didn't just take money, they used my identity to do it. That's not just betrayal, that's fraud. Serious fraud. I leaned back in my chair staring at the screen. $85,000, spent on a fantasy, a wedding they couldn't afford, a man who couldn't sustain the image he sold, and a mother who signed off on all of it like it was justified. I could already hear her voice. We're family, that word again, used like a shield, like it erased consequences. It doesn't. Not where I come from. I opened a new document, started making notes, names, dates, amounts, connections, everything they thought they hid, everything they assumed I'd never look into. They made one mistake. They assumed I was still the same person who walked into that house years ago and accepted whatever they handed me. I wasn't. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to warn them. They'd already told me everything I needed to know. Most people would have called the police right then. They would have screamed and demanded justice. But the army taught me something crucial. Never confront an enemy until you have completely surrounded their perimeter. I closed the laptop and sat there for a second, staring at my reflection in the black screen. Then I got to work. Not emotional work. Not reactive work. Real work. The kind that builds outcomes. The version of my life my family never cared to understand was the one that mattered now. My logistics firm wasn't small, not anymore. I just never corrected them. We handled contract routing for mid-sized distributors at first, then larger ones, then companies that didn't like delays, mistakes, or excuses, the kind that paid well for precision. I built systems, clean ones, efficient, quiet. No flashy marketing, no social media, no need. Word spread where it needed to. Within 3 years, I wasn't chasing clients anymore. They were coming to me. Revenue scaled, fast, margins stayed tight. And I kept everything structured, Low profile, high control. By the time Chloe was picking wedding hashtags, I had already crossed into 7 figures. Liquid, no debt, no noise. That's the advantage of being underestimated. People don't ask questions when they think you're still trying to figure things out. I didn't tell them. I didn't need to, because now, that assumption was about to cost them everything. The next morning, I made 2 calls. First one was to a forensic accountant. Not a friend. Not a referral from someone who knew a guy. A professional. I sent him the documents. Every page. Every number. Every transaction I had traced. He didn't react emotionally. That's how I knew I picked right. "Give me 72 hours, he said. "You'll have 48, I replied. Pause. Then a quiet understood. Second call was a lawyer. Not the kind that sends letters hoping people cooperate. The kind that builds cases people can't escape. I laid it out. Identity theft, forgery, fraudulent loan, misappropriated trust funds, clean facts, no drama. He didn't interrupt, didn't question the seriousness, just asked one thing. "Do you want recovery or do you want leverage?" I didn't hesitate. "Both." Another pause. "Then I'll start drafting." That's all I needed. From that point on, everything moved in parallel. The accountant built the financial map, every dollar traced, every signature analyzed, every inconsistency documented. He flagged the forged signature within hours, pressure points wrong, stroke order slightly off, enough to stand in court. The lawyer built the structure around it. Civil case, criminal exposure, timing, everything positioned. Not for noise, for impact. And while they worked, I kept digging, not into them, into everything connected to them. That's when I saw it. Hawthorne Estate, the venue. The crown jewel Chloe wouldn't stop talking about. Historic, exclusive, fully booked out for months. I pulled the public records, then the private filings, then the financial disclosures tied to the holding company. The numbers didn't match the image. Revenue down, maintenance costs up, deferred repairs, a couple of missed payments buried in the fine print. And one key detail. A pending restructuring notice. Quiet, not public-facing, but real. They were bleeding, slowly, trying to hold the image together long enough to stay afloat. Classic. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about getting my money back. This was positioning. If they lost the venue, Chloe's entire perfect wedding collapsed. If they kept the venue, they were vulnerable. Either way, there was an opening. I made another call, different tone this time. Calm, direct, business. "I'm interested in acquiring a property," I said. The broker didn't take me seriously at first. You can hear it in people's voices. They hear what they expect, until they don't. "I'm looking at Hawthorne Estate," I added. That changed things. Tone shifted. Details opened up. Meetings got scheduled. Within a week, I was sitting across from people who had no idea who they were dealing with. They saw a buyer. They didn't see the context. Didn't need to. I reviewed everything, on site, in person, walked the ballroom, not as a guest, as an owner would, counted exits, checked sightlines, looked at flow. It was a good property, bad management, worse financial planning. They needed liquidity, fast. I didn't negotiate aggressively, didn't need to. Cash does the talking, clean offer, quick close, no complications. They accepted. Of course they did. Within 3 weeks, the Hawthorne Estate changed hands. No press, no announcement, just paperwork. Signed, filed, done. I didn't put my name on it. I used a blind LLC layered structure. Nothing flashy, just enough separation to keep things quiet. Because timing matters. And I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. There was one more piece. The general manager, Mr. Sterling, 60 years old, sharp eyes, clean posture. The kind of man who had seen every version of wealth come through those doors. Real and fake. He met me in his office the day after the deal closed. Didn't waste time. "Are you planning major changes?" he asked. "Not immediately," I said. He studied me for a second. Measuring. "Good. I value discretion," I added. That got his attention. I noticed he said. We went over operations, staff, contracts, bookings, everything running through his hands. He knew the place. More importantly, he respected structure. I gave him one instruction. Clear, direct. "Do not reveal the new owner's identity," I said. "No matter who asks." He didn't question it. Didn't push. Just nodded once. Understood. Then I added the part that mattered. "You'll know when that changes." He held my gaze for a second. then gave a small, precise nod. That was enough. I left the estate that day with everything in place: legal case building, financial proof locked, property secured, control established, and my family, still planning their dream wedding, still posting updates, still bragging to anyone who would listen. The Hawthorne estate is booked, Chloe said in one video I came across. It's impossible to get in, Barbara commented under it. So proud of you. You deserve the best. I watched it once, then closed the app. Because they were right about one thing. It was impossible to get in. Unless you owned it. My mother and sister spent 6 months bragging to the entire town about the exclusive elite venue they had booked. They had absolutely no idea they were renting my living room. I closed the car door and saw all 3 of them through the front window, already seated like they were waiting for a verdict. Barbara at the head of the table, Chloe to her right scrolling but listening. Preston leaned back one arm over the chair, tapping his watch like time owed him something. A family meeting, that's what the text said. No context, no details, just, we need to talk. Be here at 6. I stepped inside. No one got up. No one smiled. Good. We were done pretending. Sit, Barbara said, already in control. I pulled out a chair and sat down, hands relaxed, back straight, same posture, different battlefield. Barbara folded her hands like she was about to deliver something important. We're a week out from the wedding, she started. I didn't respond, didn't nod, just listened. Everything has to be perfect, she continued. You understand that. I let a second pass. Define perfect, I said. Chloe rolled her eyes. Preston exhaled like I'd already annoyed him. Barbara ignored the tone. We had to make some upgrades, she said. The original plan wasn't aligned with the standard we're presenting. Standard again. Always that word. How much I asked. Straight to the point. That irritated her. Good. She hesitated just enough to make it clear she didn't like being rushed. 15,000, she said finally. Chloe jumped in. It's not even that much when you think about it, she added quickly. The orchids alone were worth it. The originals looked cheap. Of course they did. Preston checked his watch again. Expensive brand. Wrong energy. Catering too, he said, not looking at me. We upgraded the menu. I looked at him. Can you afford it? That got his attention. He finally looked up, jaw tight. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we could, he said. Translation, no. Barbara leaned forward slightly. This is where family comes in, she said. There it was. I stayed quiet. Let her build it. Family takes care of family, Val, she continued. We all contribute when it matters. I almost smiled. Almost. Because I knew exactly where this was going. We need you to take out a personal loan, she said. Just to cover this final bill. Just $15,000. Like it was a grocery run. I leaned back slightly. No, I said. Simple, clear, immediate. The room shifted. Chloe stopped scrolling. Preston's tapping paused. Barbara blinked once, then smiled. The kind of smile people use when they think you misunderstood. I don't think you heard me, she said. I did, I replied. Silence. Then Chloe let out a small laugh. Oh my God, don't start, she said. It's literally one loan. You're acting like we asked for your kidney. I looked at her. Didn't respond. Preston leaned forward now. You're part of this family, right? He said. There was a challenge in his voice, like he was testing something. I held his gaze. Depends what you mean by part, I said. That irritated him. Good. Barbara's tone changed, less patient, more direct. If you don't help, she said, you're making a statement. I already did, I replied. That landed. Not the way she wanted. She leaned in further, voice dropping. Cold now. Let me be very clear, she said. If you don't step up here, you are no longer part of this family. There it was, the ultimatum, clean, sharp. You can forget about coming to the wedding, she added. Chloe smirked. She thought that was the leverage, the invitation, the access, like I was still chasing it. I looked at all 3 of them, one by one, measured, calm, no emotion on my face. Inside, nothing changed. Because they were already standing on a line they didn't see, and they just stepped over it. I reached into my bag, slow, deliberate, pulled out my checkbook. That got their attention. Chloe sat up straighter. Preston leaned in slightly. Barbara relaxed. They thought they won. Of course they did. That's the pattern they knew. Pressure me, push me, I fold. I opened the checkbook, clicked the pen, started writing. $15,000. Payee Barbara Thorne. Date, signature, my real one. Not the version they forged. I tore the check out, held it for a second, then placed it on the table, right in front of her. No speech, no hesitation, no attitude, just action. Barbara grabbed it fast, too fast, like it might disappear. Chloe leaned over, reading it. "Oh my God, thank you," she said, already shifting tone. "See, that wasn't so hard." Preston leaned back again, satisfied. "Appreciate it," he said, like he had any right to. I watched them, carefully, how they reacted, how quickly they moved. No questions, no paperwork, no acknowledgement of terms, just take. That's all they knew how to do. Barbara held the check like it solved everything. "We knew you'd come through," she said. I nodded once. "Of course," I said. Flat, neutral, exactly what they expected. Exactly what they needed to see. Because this wasn't about helping them. This was about finishing the structure. The accountant had already built the fraud case. The lawyer had already outlined the exposure. But this was the final piece. Voluntary payment. Documented. Traceable. Clean. It tied everything together. Proved pattern. Intent. Control. They thought they were pulling me back in. What they actually did was step deeper into the trap. I stood up. No one stopped me. No one asked anything else. Why would they? They had what they wanted, or so they thought. I grabbed my bag, headed for the door. Behind me, Chloe was already talking about flowers again. Preston was checking his watch. Barbara was holding that check like it validated everything she believed. I paused at the door for half a second. Didn't turn around, didn't need to. Then I walked out. Calm, steady, finished. They snatched the check from my hand like starving wolves, thinking they had just bullied me into submission. They didn't realize that writing that check was the final legal proof I needed to lock them in a cage of their own making. I set the last box down and rolled my shoulders once, feeling the strain settle in. The day had barely started and I was already sweating. The Hawthorne estate looked different in the morning. Same chandeliers, same polished floors, same white orchids lining every surface like they were trying to choke the room. But now there was noise. Controlled chaos, staff moving fast, coordinators whispering into headsets, vendors adjusting things that didn't need adjusting just to feel important. And in the middle of all that, my family, running it like they owned the place. Barbara stood near the entrance, directing people with clipped instructions like she'd been doing this her whole life. "Those arrangements need to be symmetrical. No, not there. Move it 2 inches to the left. Where's the runner for the aisle?" Every sentence sharp, every movement exaggerated. Chloe was upstairs, of course, getting ready, being the bride. Preston's family had already arrived early. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't here to help. They were here to inspect. I picked up another box from the stack near the service hallway, heavy, filled with favors Chloe insisted on customizing. I didn't ask what was inside. Didn't care. I carried it through the ballroom, moving around table staff and people who barely noticed me. Or noticed just enough. One of Preston's relatives, a woman in a pale blue dress, watched me as I passed. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe. Not curious, judging, like she was trying to place me. "Excuse me," she said, stopping me mid-step. I turned. "Yes." She tilted her head slightly. "Can you tell me where the restrooms are? Not rude, just certain I worked here." I held her gaze for a second, then pointed. "Down the hall, left." She nodded once. Didn't thank me. Of course she didn't. Why would she? I kept walking. Set the box down near the gift table, checked the placement, straightened it without thinking. Old habits. Barbara spotted me immediately. "Valerie," she called sharp. I turned. "Come here." I walked over. She looked me up and down, not approving. "After you finish with the boxes, I need you to steam Chloe's dress," she said. "The fabric creased during transport." I nodded once. "Anything else?" She hesitated. Then added, "And when the photographer arrives, stand in the back. We don't want you distracting from the aesthetic." There it was, said casually, like it was reasonable. I didn't react. "Got it," I said. She looked relieved, like compliance was the outcome she expected. I moved on. Upstairs, the bridal suite looked like a production set. Makeup artists, hairstylists, assistants moving in tight circles. Chloe sat in the center, wrapped in a robe, holding a glass of something sparkling, laughing. Of course she was laughing. I carried the steamer to the corner where her dress hung. $15,000. Beads, layers. Delicate fabric that required constant attention. I plugged the steamer in, waited for it to heat, then started working. Slow passes, careful distance, no mistakes. Behind me, Chloe talked, mostly about herself. Preston's parents are obsessed with the venue, she said. They said it feels like old money, someone responded. It really does. Chloe smiled, satisfied. I kept working, steam rising, fabric smoothing, control. That's what this was. Control over small details, while everything else looked chaotic. A stylist bumped into me lightly. Sorry, she said quickly. I nodded. No problem. Because none of this mattered. Not the dress. Not the comments. Not the way they saw me. I finished the last section, turned off the steamer, hung it back. Chloe glanced at the dress. Finally, she said, it looked terrible before. I didn't respond. I picked up the stack of gift bags sitting by the door. Where do these go? I asked. Bridal suite table, one of the assistants said. I nodded and carried them out, down the hallway, past the noise, past the people who didn't see me. I reached the smaller suite down the hall, door slightly open, voices inside, low, tense. I paused, not because I wanted to listen, because something in the tone didn't match the rest of the day. I pushed the door open just enough to step inside, set the bags down quietly near the table, and then I heard it, declined again, Chloe's voice. Sharp. Controlled panic under it. I don't know what you want me to say, Preston snapped. It's a temporary issue. Temporary, right. You said everything was covered, Chloe shot back. The catering, the final payments, everything. It was, he said. Something's off with the account. I stayed still, out of sight, breathing steady, listening. Chloe lowered her voice. This is not happening today, she said. Not today. Preston exhaled hard. Just give me a minute, he said. I'll figure it out. With what she asked. Another card, silence. That answered the question. Her tone shifted. Less panic, more calculation. Okay, she said. Fine. Then we adjust. Adjust. I knew that tone. I'd heard it before. It meant she was about to solve a problem, using someone else. Don't worry, she continued. Once we get back from the honeymoon, Mom is going to handle it. Preston didn't respond. How, he asked finally. Chloe didn't hesitate. She's going to get Val to sign over Grandma's cabin, she said. It's worth more than enough to cover everything. I felt something shift. Not anger, not surprise. Just confirmation. They weren't done. 85,000 wasn't enough. They were already planning the next move. Preston let out a slow breath. That'll work, he said. Of course it would. In their world. Where I still said yes. Where I still didn't see what they were doing. Where I still trusted them. Chloe laughed softly. See, relax, she said. Everything always works out. For her. I picked up the empty box I had set down. Turned. Walked out the same way I came in. No noise. No reaction. Just movement. Back into the hallway. Back into the controlled chaos. Back into the version of the day everyone else believed in. I passed Barbara on the stairs. She didn't even look at me. Too busy managing her perfect event. Good. Let her focus on that. Because none of them were paying attention to what mattered. They were so busy planning how to steal my future. They completely failed to notice that their present was standing on a trapdoor, and my hand was already on the lever. I dragged the last line of broken glass into a clean pile and kept my movements slow, deliberate, controlled. The broom scraped softly against the marble, and a few people actually laughed. Not loud, just enough to say they were comfortable. Comfortable watching someone else be put in their place. I didn't look up. Didn't need to. I could feel the room. Chloe standing a few feet away, soaking it in. Preston near the bar, trying to look unaffected, like this whole thing was beneath him. Barbara scanning the guests, making sure the narrative stayed intact. See, everything's handled. That's what she wanted them to think. That this was normal. That I was part of the staff. I nudged the last shard forward, straightened slightly, and that's when it happened. The doors, heavy oak. They didn't creak. They didn't ease open. They swung, hard. The sound cut through the room like a command. Music stopped mid-note. Every head turned. The shift was immediate. Attention snapped to the entrance. Mr. Sterling walked in first. Same posture, same clean lines. Suit pressed like it meant something. 2 corporate security guards followed behind him. Not loud, not aggressive, just present, and in his hands. A thick leather binder, not decoration, documentation, real weight. The kind that ends conversations, the kind that starts consequences. The room went still, not confused, not yet. Just paused. Trying to figure out if this was part of the show. It wasn't. Barbara reacted first. Of course she did. She moved fast, smile already in place before she even reached him. "Oh, Mr. Sterling," she said, voice warm, polished fake. "There's no need for security. My daughter is cleaning up the mess." She gestured toward me like I was proof everything was under control, like I was part of the solution. Mr. Sterling didn't even slow down, didn't acknowledge her, didn't look at her. He walked right past the smile, past the performance, past the bride. Chloe's expression shifted as he passed her. Confusion first, then irritation. That wasn't the reaction she expected. Preston straightened up, adjusting his jacket, trying to reinsert himself into the moment. Didn't work. Sterling didn't look at him either. He walked straight across the ballroom, step by step, no hesitation, no deviation, until he stopped. Right in front of me. I was still holding the broom, still standing over a pile of broken glass, exactly where they wanted me, exactly where I needed to be. The room felt tighter now, like the air had changed. People leaned in, not for entertainment anymore, for answers. Mr. Sterling stood there for a second. Then he did something that didn't fit their script. He bowed, deep. Not a nod, not a gesture. A full deliberate bow. To me, the woman holding the broom. The room didn't react right away, because it didn't process. That kind of shift takes a second. A full reset. Then the silence hit. Heavy, uncomfortable, real. I straightened fully, let the broom rest lightly against the floor, met his eyes. He spoke clearly. "No rush, no hesitation. The forensic audit is complete, ma'am," he said. His voice carried, every word landing clean, precise, controlled, like everything else about him. Behind him, the security guard stood still, not moving, not reacting, just there. He continued, "We have the police waiting outside for the individuals who committed the wire fraud." That's when the room broke. Not loudly, not yet. But you could feel it, the shift from curiosity to concern. People glanced at each other, whispers starting. Preston's parents leaned forward, eyes sharp now. Barbara froze, smile still on her face, but it didn't match her eyes anymore. Chloe didn't move at all, like her brain hadn't caught up yet. Sterling didn't look at them, didn't acknowledge the reaction. He stayed focused on me. "As per your instruction," he added, lifting the binder slightly. "All documentation has been verified and secured." Then he asked the question, simple, direct, public. "How would you like to proceed with your property?" That word landed harder than anything else, because now they were starting to understand. Not everything, not yet, but enough. Barbara's head turned slowly toward me, eyes wide, trying to connect something that didn't make sense in her world. Chloe took a step back. Just one, like distance might fix it. Preston's jaw tightened, his confidence gone, replaced with something else, calculation. Too late for that. The room wasn't laughing anymore, not a single sound, just breath, and the quiet realization that something was very, very wrong. I let the moment sit, didn't rush, didn't explain, because this was the pivot, the exact point where everything they believed flipped. I lowered my eyes briefly, looked at the broom in my hand, then back up at Sterling, and gave a small nod. Acknowledgement, not permission. He stepped back half a pace, enough to give me space, enough to make it clear who was in control now. I released the broom, let it fall. The sound was sharp, louder than it should have been, because the room was that quiet. Wood hitting marble, simple, final. The sound of the broom hitting the marble floor was the loudest noise in the room. But the words that came out of my mouth next were about to shatter my family's fake empire into a million irreparable pieces. I looked at Mr. Sterling for half a second. Then I turned to the room. No rush, no raised voice, just clarity. "I'll handle it," I said. Simple, controlled. Sterling stepped back immediately, gave me the floor. The entire room was watching now. Not judging, not laughing, waiting. I shifted my attention slowly, from Chloe to Barbara, then to Preston, and finally to his parents. They were the ones who mattered most right now, because they understood reputation. They understood risk, and more importantly, they understood consequences. "I'm going to keep this simple," I said. Every word clean, measured. "This property, Hawthorne Estate, is owned by a private holding company." A pause. Let that land. "I own that company." Silence. Not confusion, shock. You could see it spread. Table by table, face by face. Preston's mother straightened in her chair, eyes narrowing, Evaluating. Barbara shook her head slightly, like she could undo what she just heard. No, she said under her breath, not loud, just denial. I didn't look at her. Not yet. 6 months ago, I continued. I discovered that my identity had been used to secure a fraudulent home equity loan in the amount of $85,000. Now I looked at Barbara, direct, unblinking. Her face had already started to drain of color. That loan, I said, was taken out using forged signatures. Chloe's mouth opened, closed, opened again, no words. Those funds were then used, I continued, to pay for this event and to cover business losses tied to Mr. Preston Vance. I shifted my gaze to him, just long enough. He didn't hold it, looked away first. Of course he did. Preston's father leaned forward. Slow, controlled. Is that true, he asked. Not to me, to his son. Preston didn't answer, didn't need to. Silence said enough. Barbara finally found her voice. This is ridiculous, she said louder now. You don't know what you're talking about. I turned back to her, calm. Every document has been verified, I said. Every transaction traced. I gestured slightly toward the binder in Sterling's hands. Signature analysis, financial records, transfer logs. Barbara's breathing changed. Faster now, shallow. You forged my name, I said. You emptied my trust account. And you used both to fund this wedding. The word you landed hard. Because there was no one else left to blame. Chloe took a step back, then another. Her dress caught slightly on the floor. She didn't notice. Val, she started. I didn't acknowledge it. Not yet. Preston's mother stood up. Full attention now. Preston, she said, voice sharp. Explain this. He didn't. Couldn't. Because there wasn't an explanation that fixed this. Not in this room. Not in front of these people. Barbara grabbed the edge of the table, knuckles white. You're twisting things, she said. We were going to fix it. I almost smiled. Almost. When I asked. She didn't answer, because there wasn't a plan, just more taking. Chloe's voice broke through. It was temporary, she said. We were going to pay it back. With what I asked. Silence again. That question didn't need an answer either. I let it sit, let the room absorb it. Then I moved forward, one step. Now we're going to talk about this venue, I said. Barbara looked up. Hope, desperation, like maybe this part was still salvageable. It's booked, she said quickly. Paid for. I nodded once. It was paid for, I said. Then I clarified. With fraudulent funds. That hit harder than anything else so far. Because now, this wasn't just personal. It was legal and public. I turned slightly toward Sterling. Terminate the contract, I said. No hesitation. Yes, ma'am, he replied. He opened the binder, flipped to a section. Due to the use of illegally obtained funds, he announced, projecting his voice, the agreement is hereby void. The word void echoed. Clean, final. Chloe shook her head. No, wait, she said. You can't do that. The wedding, this is my wedding. Her voice cracked. For the first time, it wasn't controlled. It wasn't curated. It was real. I looked at her, finally. You should have thought about that before you stole from me, I said. No anger, just truth. That broke something. She dropped. Literally, knees hitting the floor, the fabric of her $15,000 dress spreading around her like it still meant something. It didn't, not anymore. Preston stepped back. Distance. Instinct. His parents weren't looking at Chloe anymore. They were looking at him, and what he represented. Risk, liability, embarrassment. Barbara tried to step forward. Security moved before she could. Not aggressive, just firm. Ma'am, one of them said quietly. We need you to come with us. Her composure snapped. I am not going anywhere, she said, voice rising. This is my daughter's wedding. Sterling didn't intervene. He didn't need to. The structure was already in motion. The police are waiting outside, the guard added. That did it. Barbara's face went pale, real pale. Not dramatic, physical, like her body finally caught up to what was happening. You called the police, she whispered. I didn't answer, didn't need to. Chloe looked up at me from the floor, eyes wide, wet. Val, please, she said. I held her gaze for a second, then looked away, because there was nothing left to say. Security moved them toward the exit. Barbara resisting, Chloe stumbling, the dress dragging. Preston didn't follow. He stayed where he was, frozen, watching everything fall apart. His parents stood up, no words, just distance. They were already separating themselves. That's how that world works. The music never came back. No one asked for it. No one wanted it. The room stayed quiet. People processing, recalculating. I turned back to Sterling. "It's handled," I said. "Yes, ma'am, that was it. No celebration, no speech, just done." 6 months later. The balcony faced west. Late afternoon light. Quiet. No noise. No pressure. Just space. Mine. I sat in a chair that actually fit the way I liked to sit. Back straight. Feet planted. Coffee in my hand. Black. Always black. The estate ran smoothly. Better than before. Clean operations. Clear structure. No illusions. I didn't hear from them again. Not directly. Didn't need to. Some things end once, and stay ended. I took a sip of coffee. Let the silence sit. Because silence like this is earned. They handed me a broom because they thought my only purpose was to clean up their messes. They were right. I swept them out of my life permanently. Sometimes being the grunt of the family just means you know exactly how to bury the trash. I didn't feel angry after it was over. That's the part people don't expect. No yelling, no late-night breakdown, no replaying the moment in my head like I missed something, just quiet. And for the first time in a long time, clarity. I sat on that balcony, coffee in my hand, and I went back through everything. Not the wedding, not the confrontation, the pattern. Because what happened didn't start with a forged signature or a stolen loan. It started years before that. Small things. Things I ignored because they didn't feel big enough to fight. Being the one who fixed everything. Being the one who adjusted. Being the one who understood. At some point, that stopped being a role. It became a system, and I stayed in it. That's the part I had to own. Not what they did. That was on them. But how long I allowed access. That was on me. Here's the truth most people don't say out loud. Being the strong one in a family doesn't mean you're respected. Most of the time, it means you're convenient. You don't break, you don't complain, you figure things out. So they stop asking what it costs you. And over time that turns into something else. Expectation, then entitlement, then access. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought staying calm made me the bigger person. I thought loyalty would eventually come back around. It doesn't work like that. Loyalty without boundaries is not loyalty. It's access. Access to your time, your energy, your patience, your money. And if you don't control that access, someone else will. Usually the person who benefits the most from you staying exactly where you are. In my case, that was my family. And I'm not saying that lightly, I'm saying it clearly. Because a lot of people watching this are in the same position. Different story, same pattern. There's always a golden child. The one who gets attention just for existing. And then there's the one who carries weight, fixes problems, keeps things running, and gets told that's just who they are. That's not personality, that's conditioning. I learned discipline in the army. I learned how to push through exhaustion, how to stay focused under pressure, how to finish the job no matter what. That worked out there. It kept me alive. But back home, it did something else. It made me tolerate things I shouldn't have. Because when you're used to pressure, you don't always recognize when it's unnecessary. You just handle it. That's the trap. Just because you can carry something doesn't mean you should. That was the shift for me, not the wedding, not the moment with the broom. The real shift happened when I stopped asking, why would they do this to me, and started asking, why did I let them have this level of access? That question changes everything, because it puts you back in control, not emotionally, structurally. You start seeing patterns instead of moments. You stop reacting and start adjusting. I wasn't blindsided, not really. The signs were there, the comments, the expectations, the way decisions got made without me but somehow still involved me. I just didn't label it, because labeling it would mean dealing with it, and dealing with it would mean conflict. So I avoided it, stayed quiet, stayed useful, stayed available, until they stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. That's how it happens. Slow, quiet, normalized. And by the time it becomes obvious, it's already deep. That's why I'm saying this directly. If someone only values you when you're useful, they don't value you. They manage you. They manage your time, your reactions, your willingness to help. And the moment you step outside of that role, they push back. Not because you did something wrong, but because you changed the system. That's what happened at that table when I said no. It wasn't about the money, it was about the pattern breaking. And they couldn't handle that. So they escalated. Ultimatums, pressure, threats, all or nothing. That's not family, that's leverage. Real family doesn't need leverage. That was another thing I had to accept. Just because someone is related to you doesn't mean they operate from the same values. And once you see that, you stop expecting fairness from people who don't believe in it. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you accurate. There's a difference. I didn't cut them off because of one event. I cut them off because I finally saw the structure behind it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You don't argue with it. You don't try to fix it. You step out of it. That's what I did, and that's why it worked. Because I didn't try to change them. I changed my position, removed access, set boundaries, and let the consequences play out without interference. That's the part people struggle with. Letting it play out, not stepping in, not softening the impact, not explaining yourself over and over again, just holding the line. It feels uncomfortable at first, because you're used to being the one who adjusts. But once you do it, you realize something. You were never difficult. You were just the only one willing to tolerate what others wouldn't. And the moment you stop tolerating it, everything shifts. Not always clean, not always easy, but real. And real is better than comfortable, every time. I didn't become careful overnight. I became careful because I saw what happens when you're not. And here's the part most people don't like hearing. What happened to me wasn't rare. The scale might be bigger. The setting might look extreme, but the pattern that shows up every day, just quieter, less obvious, easier to ignore, until it isn't. So if you're watching this thinking, that would never happen to me, I want you to pause right there, because that's exactly how it happens. You trust the wrong people with the right information, and you never check. I didn't catch what they did because I was lucky. I caught it because I look, that's it. I check my accounts. I review my statements. I pay attention to details most people skip. Not because I'm paranoid, because I'm responsible. There's a difference. Most people treat trust like a security system. If I trust them, they won't do anything. That's not how it works. Trust is not protection, documentation is. If your name is attached to something, you need to know where it's being used. Not later, now. That means checking your credit report regularly. Not once a year when something feels off. Consistently, because by the time something feels off, it's already happened. I tell people this all the time. If you're not actively monitoring your financial identity, you're leaving it open. And not just to strangers, to anyone who has access, family included, especially family, because they already have pieces of information others don't. Birthdays, addresses, old records, enough to fill in gaps if they decide to. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good, it should. Because awareness is the first step. Not fear, awareness. I didn't confront my mother the moment I saw those documents. That wasn't weakness, that was control. Most people react immediately. They call, they confront. They demand answers. And what happens? The other person gets time. Time to delete. Time to explain. Time to reshape the story. You lose your advantage the second you show your hand too early. That's why I didn't. I gathered everything first. Every document, every transaction, every inconsistency. I built a full picture before I said a single word. Because feelings don't win disputes. Evidence does. That's something I learned early. And it applies everywhere, not just legal situations. Work, business, relationships. If you can't prove it, you can't control the outcome. So I made sure I could prove everything, cleanly, clearly, no gaps. That's how you protect yourself. Not by reacting louder, by preparing better. There's another part people avoid, the language. The phrases that sound normal but aren't. We're family, you owe us. Don't make this a big deal. Those aren't statements. They're pressure tools. They're designed to shut down your thinking, to make you feel like saying no is wrong. Like setting a boundary is betrayal. It's not. It's structure. If someone needs to use guilt to get access to your resources, they already know they don't have a fair reason. That's your signal, not to argue, to step back and reassess. Here's a simple rule I use. If the roles were reversed, would they do the same for you? Not what they say, what they've actually done. If the answer is no, then you adjust your access immediately, not aggressively, not dramatically, just clearly. Less information, less availability, less exposure. You don't need to explain it. You just do it. That's how control works. Quiet, consistent, effective. Another thing people get wrong. You don't need to become cold to protect yourself. You don't need to shut everyone out. You just need to be clear about who gets what level of access. Not everyone deserves full access. That includes people with the same last name. That's not harsh. That's accurate. And accuracy protects you. I didn't win because I was smarter than them. I won because I paid attention longer. I didn't ignore patterns. I didn't excuse behavior. I didn't confuse familiarity with safety. That's the mistake a lot of people make. Just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's safe. Sometimes it just means you've been around it long enough to stop questioning it. That's where you need to wake up. Look at the structure. Look at the patterns. Look at the outcomes, not the intentions people claim. Intentions don't matter if the outcome keeps hurting you. That's another rule. Always judge by outcome, not by what someone says they meant. If the result is the same every time, that's the truth, not the explanation. And once you see that, you stop negotiating with it. You stop hoping it'll change. You adjust your position. That's what I did. Not all at once, but once I saw it clearly, I didn't go back. Because going back means accepting the same outcome again. And that's a choice. One you don't have to make. You don't need to become cold. You just need to become clear. Clear about your boundaries. Clear about your access. Clear about what you're willing to tolerate. Because once you're clear, everything else becomes easier to manage, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. I didn't feel powerful standing in that ballroom. That's something people expect me to say. Like that moment fixed everything. Like watching them fall apart gave me something back. It didn't. What I felt was done, finished. Like closing a file that had been open too long. That's the part most people misunderstand about revenge. They think it's about making someone hurt the way you were hurt. Matching pain. Balancing the scale. That kind of thinking keeps you tied to the situation. Emotionally, mentally, sometimes for years. That's not revenge, that's attachment. Just a different version of it. Real revenge, if you want to call it that, looks a lot quieter. It's control, it's timing, it's knowing exactly when to step in and when to step back. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. I removed access. Access to me, my time, my resources, my patience. And once that access was gone, everything else collapsed on its own. That's the part people don't like hearing, because it means you don't get the dramatic moment. You don't get the long speech. You don't get the emotional release everyone expects. You get something better. Distance. And distance gives you something most people are missing. Perspective. Once I stepped out of that system, I could finally see it clearly, not as a victim, not as the strong one, just objectively, patterns, decisions, outcomes. I saw how much energy I had been spending maintaining something that was never balanced. How much effort went into keeping things smooth for people who never planned to do the same for me. That realization doesn't make you angry. It makes you precise. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-giving. You stop trying to prove your value to people who benefit from ignoring it. That's the shift. And once it happens, you don't go back. I get messages from people asking the same question, was it worth it? They're not asking about the money or the property. They're asking if cutting ties like that actually feels better. Here's the honest answer. It doesn't feel better right away. It feels different, quieter, less chaotic. At first that can feel uncomfortable because you're used to the noise, the tension, the constant need to manage other people's expectations. When that disappears, there's space. And most people don't know what to do with space. So they try to fill it. They reach back, reconnect, re-engage. Because familiar dysfunction feels easier than unfamiliar peace. That's the mistake. Peace isn't supposed to feel loud. It's supposed to feel stable, predictable, yours. It took me time to get used to that. Sitting on that balcony, no demands, no calls, no pressure, just quiet. And once I got used to it, I realized something. I wasn't missing them. I was missing the version of them I thought existed. That's another hard truth. You're not always letting go of people. Sometimes you're letting go of the idea of who you wanted them to be. That's what makes it difficult. But it's also what makes it necessary. Because you can't build a real life on expectations that were never going to be met. You build it on what's actually there. And what's actually there needs to be enough, or it doesn't stay. That's the standard now. Not emotional, not reactive, just clear. If someone respects your boundaries, they stay. If they don't get access. Simple, no drama, no negotiation. I don't need to prove anything anymore. That's another thing people get stuck on, trying to show others their value, trying to make them understand. You don't need that. If someone can't see your value and you're consistent, reliable, and clear, they're not missing information. They're making a choice. And once you see that, you stop trying to change their mind. You change your position. That's power, not control over others. Control over access. Control over where you put your time and energy. And who gets to benefit from it. That's what the Broom moment really was. Not humiliation, exposure. It showed exactly how they saw me, what role they had assigned me. And once I saw it clearly, I had a choice. Stay in it or step out of it. I stepped out, and everything after that was just execution. So if you've ever been in that position, undervalued, overused, treated like the backup plan, listen carefully. You don't need to prove your worth to people who rely on you doubting it. You don't need to argue your boundaries into existence. You set them, and then you hold them. Quietly, consistently, without explanation, because the right people don't need one, and the wrong people won't respect one anyway. That's the difference. And once you understand that, everything changes. Not all at once, but permanently. If this story felt familiar in any way, if you've seen even a piece of your own life in it, then you already know how real this is. That's why I tell these stories, not for the drama, for the clarity. So if you're into revenge stories, family drama, that actually gives you something you can use in real life, go ahead and subscribe, because the next one might hit even closer than this did.